I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that closely follows the Carolina Panthers that Dave Canales leans very heavily into Pete Carroll and his philosophies and the way that he goes about it. We got to hear some information, some tidbits from Pete Carroll and legendary coach Andy Reid on what they thought about Dave Canales in his first season in 2024 as a head coach. This is, of course, all a part of the league meetings that are happening right now. Owners, lots of rule proposals, tush push, ban, I don't know. All those things are being floated around. But I thought it would be important to take a second and dissect exactly what we heard from Pete Carroll and Andy Reid and how they thought he navigated and managed his first season as an NFL head coach. I think one of the things that I continue to draw to is Pete Carroll and Dave Canales and their relationship. You think back to the coaching journey for Canales at El Camino College. He's talked about that. Then moving on to USC, the Trojans under Pete Carroll, and then working for Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks since 2010. That's a long time, man. You think about working for someone, and I know today in society that's changed, working relationships, and you're at a company maybe 3 or 4 years, 2 to 3 years, a year. Think about being somewhere, staying patient, working towards a goal for 10, 11 years and working along someone. You got to get along really well with the person running the show and your boss. You're going to learn a lot of good things about them. He's known for his energy, speaking of Dave Canales, and I think we've seen that, the positivity, that continues to be a focal point of Dave Canales and his personality. And many people wondered, how would Dave Canales manage this happy-go-lucky approach when things got rough? And things got rough very early, from the 2 games in to benching Bryce Young, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But he continued to be himself, very good communicator. We've heard bits and pieces from other former players with high praise for him. And I do think he is one of the up-and-coming coaches in the NFL ranks. Now, still work to be done, but I feel like he's taken the first step in a positive direction. And a lot of that, again, talking through Pete Carroll's perspective, who truly is his mentor. Now, Pete Carroll, 73 years old, going to coach the Raiders. He remembers Canales as an energetic pup who grew into a coach with philosophy mirroring, again, a lot of Carroll's own, focused on resilience, learning, and culture. When you think about program building, Pete Carroll praised Canales for laying a solid foundation in Carolina, drawing from years of his mentorship in Seattle. He highlights Canales' ability to stay true to his vision despite a challenging rookie season, and that's important. I don't think you could have predicted anything across the board that the Carolina Panthers went through, whether it was the terrible defense, the injuries, Bryce Young, none of that. And again, there are moments this past year where Dave Canales talked about being overwhelmed, honestly, as a first-time head coach and seeing the things that come across his desk and dealing with the things that he had to deal with as a head coach that he never had as a position coach or an offensive coordinator. Really nice quote there from Pete Carroll. Said, he became the philosophy and the approach. I watched every step they took this year. What do you think this says about Canales' growth and Carroll's influence? I mean, we know these guys are interlocked. Probably not as interlocked right now. Also, hiring Pete Carroll's son on the team last year. Not going to be as interlocked now that Carroll's back in the coaching ranks with the Raiders, kicking things up a notch. But it's nice, man. It is nice to have someone to call on to as a mentor. Whenever something comes up, being able to ask a question, hey, what would you do in this situation? How did you manage this? What do you think about this or that? So really good insight. And we got to talk about, of course, probably the most controversial thing of the entire season last year, Bryce Young's decision, the defining moment around that. We know he made waves by benching Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick, putting in Andy Dalton. And it was a very risky move. And a lot of people wanted to say, well, this was Tepper. This was this person. This was blah, blah, blah. Like, people were forcing in all these ideas, and they would not give credit to Dave Canales. They just wouldn't. One of the things that Carroll talked about when speaking on Canales was his ability to maximize the quarterback position. Again, we know Dalton provided that spark. He was doing what was best for the team. Young sat on the bench. We talked about him being benched numerous times, then returned as the late season starter and really kind of came into his own, looking much better. Andy Reid saw Young again late in the season. We know about his performance against the Kansas City Chiefs, 21 of 35, 263. Credited Canales for reading Young's need and accelerating his progress. Understanding that, hey, this game's too big, it's too fast right now. We're going to sit you out. We're going to get you developed and give you a chance to get back in there and play at your own pace and speed, which is extremely important. I mean, benching Bryce Young, I talked about it as a career-defining moment for Canales, a career-defining moment for Bryce Young, and at least at where things sit today, things are headed in a positive direction. Canales' growth as a coach, when you heard from Pete Carroll and Andy Reid, they highlighted Canales' ability to navigate, again, unique situation with Young, Dalton, showing maturity, approach to life lessons, helping players and himself bounce back from pitfalls. I mean, a lot of the things that Canales talks about and we hear about, he seems to be a man of his word. And I think those things are going to carry over, and it's extremely important as you build out and head into the future for the Carolina Panthers. Culture is something so, it's kind of a cliche at this point, but having a culture where you can cultivate things and build it the way that you want it. I mean, think about going into a workplace where everyone's down in the dumps, nobody's motivated, nobody wants to be there. You're not going to be productive at any organization or company where the culture and fit isn't right and the people aren't working together towards the same goal. So a lot of positive news, a lot of high praise from Pete Carroll, from Andy Reid. And as we look into year two, some may wonder, is this a year where we should talk about playoffs for the Carolina Panthers? And I keep going back and forth. Like, personally, I think it may take a little bit longer. But at the same time, knowing how Canales is building this and how he wants this thing to go, I think we absolutely, although they may not come out and say it right away, have to be talking about how this team can get into the playoffs in a very weak NFC South and do something that we have just been longing for so long in the Carolinas, to see winning football and to see this team take the next step. As always, this is Carolina Dad. Appreciate y'all tuning in. Y'all can have a good one.